Raina Troy Hotline.
Alicia, Michael, what's going on?
We know you have takes. We have takes.
I'm actually surprised that your rant line, rave line, whatever, isn't completely full.
Why can't we just win a game?
Can I blame Michael Castillo for this?
Can I blame Bob Connolly for this?
Could I put on a zebra shirt and just go out there? Scratch, claw, up against the wall.
Can't explain it what I'm feeling right now, guys.
I can't believe it. Let's open up that race line. Woohoo!
Oh, I can't believe USC has hired Lincoln Riley. Oh, yeah.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Random Troy Radio, episode 486, coming to you on Monday, June 5th. We're going to talk about a slew of commitments that the Trojans have picked up really in the last basically 24 hours, 36 hours, whatever it is. SC has gotten a bunch of commitments. We're going to talk about that, talk a little bit about the search to find a new athletic director at USC, and then also play a fun little game with us here at the end before we get into the mailbag and open up the mailbag with everyone watching us here on YouTube and so much more. As always, you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Look for us at Reign of Troy over there. You can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We are there. Email address, reignoftroy@fansided.com. I'm your host, Michael Castillo, joined along with my co-host here in the Reign of Troy studio in Los Angeles, Alicia Derritol.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. We are back for another episode, and this should be a fun one because there's a lot to talk about on the recruiting front, hey?
Yeah, I mean, a lot to talk about is a little bit of an understatement.
Yeah.
If you haven't been paying attention on Monday, the recruiting weekend went very well for USC.
Just a little bit.
We can just say that for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, we were putting together the rundown, and I worry about this thing getting outdated ASAP.
Honestly, I was writing about this for fansided.com earlier today and thinking to myself, like, the good news is that they decided to do this wave of commitments before we started recording, but who's to say there won't be more? So yeah.
Right. Yeah, you never know. Before we get to the news, we want to talk about a new opportunity for SC fans. DraftKings has updated their sign-up offer and upgraded for a little limited time. And so if you're a new user over at DraftKings, you can receive $200 in bonus bets, followed by just following these 3 steps. Create an account, deposit, and then wager $5 on any sport. Whether your first wager wins or loses, you can still receive the $200 in bonus bets. All you have to do is use a special little code. Alicia, what's the code?
Reign of Troy, all one word.
Yes, use the code Reign of Troy, all one word when you sign up. The best part is using the code not only helps you get the bonus, but supports the podcast. Once again, maximize your first bets over at DraftKings by using the code Reign of Troy, all one word, at DraftKings. Reign of Troy is the code. It's not Reign of Troy, all one word. It's just...
No, it's Reign of Troy, REIGNOFTROY.
Yes.
It's important that it's the REIGN version of Reign of Troy.
Well, yes, I'm just saying don't write Reign of Troy, all one word.
Yeah, don't do that.
But write Reign of Troy as all one word.
Yes.
You know how it goes. The offer is available for new customers who are 21 plus and physically present in legal gambling states. I hope that applies to you. If not, then you can hope, I guess, or you can travel to those states. Please remember to gamble responsibly. Check out the episode description for the full terms of the offer. There
yes, indeed.
There you go. The first live read here on YouTube. Reign of Troy, all one word, as Scott says in the chat. Yeah, there you go. But Elisa, we got a bunch of news to get to. And after this news, you might want to put a $5 down on the Trojans. You never know. So let's get to it. Okay, the news. SC had a recruiting weekend over the weekend, and it certainly came up well. SC has gotten 5 commitments since Sunday. Today is Monday night as we record this. I'm going to walk through them in order. SC got 3-star offensive tackle Hayden Trader, an unranked prospect in the 24/7 Sports composite for 2024. Unranked in the composite, but a 3-star nonetheless. 6'6", 300 pounds out of Cherry Creek High in Inglewood, Colorado.
Yeah, he started the wave about 9:00 on Sunday, and it feels like a prospect that USC is hoping to develop and grow. He's a guy who you get out from under Deion Sanders' nose over there in Colorado, and a sign that USC's offensive line recruiting is going to be stocked up quite a bit in this class, as future developments will also attest to.
Yeah, exactly. And he started the wave for 4-star safety Jarvis Boatwright. Jarvis Starboard Boatwright.
I was waiting for Jarvis Starboard Boatwright.
Starboard is back, baby. It is back. We know that SC had the legendary basketball player Benny Boatwright for several seasons recently, and now Starboard is back. There's a Starboard on the football field. It's going to be Jarvis Boatwright. The 4-star safety was favored to go to Florida. He has committed to the Trojans. He's 426th in the 2024 247 Sports composites for next season. 6'1", 170 pounds out of Clearwater, Florida. I think if you want your boat somewhere, you'd want it in Clearwater, and Clearwater is a good place to be. From.
Yes, that works.
Yeah,
that works. What also works is getting a hard hitting safety out of Florida. It's always a good thing. There's a lot of recruiting battles that are difficult to win in Florida. As you mentioned, the Gators were sort of the favorites, home region favorites for Jarvis Boatwright, and USC impressed him mightily on the visit, and that's going to be the story for all of these recruits, is just how impressive USC's visit is.
Yeah,
I think it's a mark of not only California, not only Los Angeles being a very impressive thing, but clearly the Trojans recruiting staff is doing something right in terms of how they're selling the program to these recruits, because it feels like guys got on campus and they just rave not just about the campus, but about the presentation, about the offers, the what USC as an entire entity offers to them. So yeah, you go into Florida and you get a really promising safety that you can look forward to seeing in a couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely. And which leads us into the third one, which is 4-star cornerback Dakota Fields. He picks the Trojans over the Oregon Ducks. 78th in the 24/7 Sports composite for next year's recruiting class. 6'2", $175 out of Sarah over in Gardena. Historic USC pipeline Sarah is, and SC gets one in Dakota Fields.
And this one is the one that you look at and say might be the most important, but also the
highest ranked. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the highest ranked of the bunch, most important because it's a pipeline. But also the sort of, and most important because Oregon was very, very involved in this recruitment. And when it came down to it, he was either going to go to USC or Oregon. And so if you miss on him, he's going to well, I guess these aren't recruits for Oregon. That's to be fair, but you still lose him. No longer a conference rival, but you still don't want to see him going.
How weird is that?
It's very strange to think about that.
Because I know you're going to say you don't want him to still be in the conference.
Yeah, he's not in the conference anymore.
He's never going to know Oregon as a conference rival. Yeah,
yeah, it's pretty wild. But it felt like Oregon was kind of confident in getting him, and this is just another Dante Williams masterclass to keep him home. And they always say in recruiting, you got to build the fence around Southern California, and getting the top prospect out of Sarah is an important part of any USC recruiting class. Yeah. And we've seen USC recruiting classes where they haven't gotten that done, and it's been a negative factor for the overall recruiting health of the program. So big get. Also, love the name Dakota Fields. Just sweet. Yes.
Yeah, so many of these guys have great names.
Great names going on.
Fields is a good get, not only because he's a highly rated prospect, but when SC was kind of struggling with recruiting at the end of the Clay Helton era, the thing was SC wasn't getting the top 10, top 20 guys in the state. Fields is one of those guys. Currently ranked 13th in the state. SC would get another one, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes, from in-state, who's on that ranking list too. But next one in order is 4-star edge rusher Cameron Fountain. Another great name. He was a Tennessee lean before picking the Trojans today. The 81st ranked recruit in the 24/7 Sports Composite. 6'5.5", 237 out of Booker T High in Atlanta, Georgia.
Yeah, if getting Dakota Fields was the most important, then getting Cameron Fountain is the most impressive. You go into Georgia, take a guy who was Tennessee thought they were in a good position with him, and he goes ahead and chooses USC. And again, it's being very impressed by everything that USC has to offer out here, and to the point that you're willing to leave home, go across the country, and see what it's all about at USC. So big time get for USC. Another sort of flex your muscles kind of get for USC that just feels like one of those, top 100 prospects that can be foundational for your recruiting class.
Yeah, we on the pod like to put a lot of stock in the 24/7 Sports Composite, since it puts, it looks at all the rankings: 24/7 Sports, Rivals, On3. I think ESPN is in there. Whoever else is in there at this point, it takes into account all those. But if you look at just 24/7 Sports themselves, Fountain is the 6th ranked edge rusher in the country and a top 50 prospect. So someone who could absolutely progress up those rankings when you look at the composite side of things. So I think the biggest side of this is that you talk about how getting your in-state guys are important because you want to be able to do the things that you can control, and in-state recruiting is what you usually can control. If you're USC, for the most part, when you lose that, you really have sort of lost the plot. But I think it's telling that when SC is at the peak of their game, they're going out of states and they're getting dudes from all over the country. And being able to get Trader out of Colorado, Boatwright out of Florida, Fountain out of Georgia, guys that were either leaning or flirting with other schools in those states, I think is pretty telling for where USC's recruiting efforts kind of stand, which leads us into the most recent one. A couple hours before we started recording, Manasseh Tete, a 4-star offensive lineman out of Central Catholic in Modesto up north. 6'5", 290 pounds, the 315th ranked recruit in the 24/7 Sports Composite. In-state guy, Northern California, but he was favored to go to Florida State. So Florida State, a hot sort of upstart program at the point of where they are in the Mike Norvell era, right? Like things are sort of coming together for the Noles. And here goes SC to take Tete away.
Yeah, Bud Elliott over at 24/7 Sports in April had put his crystal ball prediction for Tete at Florida State at a pretty high confidence level, because they do confidence picks now, and he put it at a 7, which is pretty high. And that was based on something.
Bud is always clued in with FSU, so
yeah,
that's a lot of merit there.
So there's something behind that, but clearly, again, it's a USC gets the visit, USC impresses, and USC convinces him to stay closer to home, which is huge. Modesto isn't exactly like put a fence around LA kind of territory, but it is still an area that USC should recruit strongly. It's still USC should have first pick of the guys that come out of that region. And especially when they're offensive linemen, especially when they're, 4-star prospects. And you talked about how, we put a lot of stake in 24/7 Sports Composite, But if you look at the 24/7 Sports ranking, again, this is another guy that 24/7 Sports themselves, which is the recruiting service that I frankly trust the most. They have a much higher stock on this guy, 143rd nationally compared to 314th nationally for the composite, 12th OT in the class compared to 28th in the composite. So this is, I mean, we talk all the time that one of the things that USC didn't do very well in the past when they were struggling more in recruiting was to get the best offensive linemen that possible in the region.
Yeah.
And this is what this is the prospect exactly that you have to add. And there's other ones out there too. USC has a lot of work left to do in this class when it comes to recruiting California, when it comes to recruiting the sort of big men that are essential to building your program.
Modern Day as a couple, and Brandon Baker, DeAndre Carter.
Yeah, and on the defensive line, Aiden Breland as well. So there's some big hitters that USC still has to lock down if they possibly can in this class. But if you think about this recruiting weekend, probably goes as well as you could hope. And you have set now a standard that, you're impressing these guys. What will future recruiting weekends potentially look like?
Yeah.
The class is starting to feel a lot stronger, especially because, going into this month, the class was extremely small. It was not ranked highly in the
going
team
into
rankings.
This month. I mean,
yeah,
it's only the 5th day of the month, right? Like,
yeah,
these things have turned around really quickly.
Yeah, exactly. And it was, I mean, if people had asked the question, I would have said, the summer months are when recruiting really ramps up for the next class. If USC is still in this position in August, then we can certainly have a discussion about whether or not to hit the panic button. But, don't hit the panic button yet. And this sort of weekend is exactly why, USC is going to be able to make an impression with these guys. They just have to keep this recruiting momentum up. And also, it's June. You got to keep these commits committed. That's the trick.
Yeah. June gloom in LA, but June boom for
June
Lincoln
boom
Riley.
for Lincoln Riley. I love it.
Exactly.
I love it.
So as of this recording, the class's 8 commitments in the 2024 recruiting class now ranks 19th nationally, just ahead of the Trojans' brand new conference rival Rutgers. So we'll see what all comes of that. Obviously, a lot of things can change. They're probably not going to be one ahead of Rutgers for long. We'll see how everything comes to be. I think of the classes when, you and I were first starting to sort of do the podcast 10 years ago. The 2013 class, the infamous 2013 class. Remember that summer? Like every day it felt like in 2012. So the year before, the summer before, like every single day there was a new dude who was being committed, and they were all big names. If you're SC, that's the summer you kind of want. You want a regular season with high expectations that, SC is able to back up with the Heisman Trophy winner this year. And if you do that and ride off into the sunset with all these recruits, continue to excel on things like NIL and what you can, offer in terms of a sales pitch for these recruits, you're going to keep getting recruiting wins. I think there's a reason why you hear coaches in the SEC talking about SC as one of the sort of schools that, you look at as a big competitor nationally, right? Like Saban has had multiple quotes about
Saban
throwing SC around.
Saban. I have we can talk about that, by the way. It's not on our rundown, but Nick Saban was complaining about NIL and how it takes away the competitive balance, as though Alabama hasn't been benefiting from a lack of competitive balance in college football for the last decade. But sure, go ahead, Saban. The accusation was that USC and Texas A&M and Texas are paying out these big NIL dollars, which I continue to find really funny because every school out there thinks that their NIL arm sucks, and will complain about how everyone else is spending more money, including USC fans for a long time. USC has added a bunch of collectives that are certainly going to help in that department. But I do also think that it's interesting because it seems like USC's NIL arm has been focused around transfers and taking advantage of transfers instead of paying out big bucks to entice recruits to come to USC. And
Yeah.
to be honest, I think that there's a chance that we might see USC's recruiting rankings suffer if that truly is the strategy. Then I think if you're a USC fan, you might want to get used to the idea that USC isn't going to have a top 10 recruiting class every year. But frankly, I'm okay with that because I think it is smarter to target the transfer portal because you know more of what you're getting from the transfer portal. There's less risk in the transfer portal, and that's not all recruits fit that bill. If you know if you're in a position to get someone like Dylan Raiola, the top quarterback in the class, you try to get the top quarterback in the class by any
Right.
means necessary. Like this doesn't all fit those boats, but there are players who aren't in that elite. You have to have them mode that, yeah, maybe let another school, let Texas A&M go throw the dollars at them. The important thing I think when it comes to recruiting, which is it always has always been the important part of recruiting, is build relationships. And I think that you and I have talked in the past that the best thing that Clay Helton ever did as a recruiter and as a roster manager, which he was flawed in a lot of different ways on that front, but the best thing that he did was always to build strong relationships and then leave the door open. And I think that there's certainly an argument to say that what your job in recruiting right now is to build as strong a relationship as possible with players. And it's not necessarily a failure if you don't get them straight away because you might have a second shot at them. So it's all about just building relationships and then maintaining making sure that your relationships are open to then strike in transfers or in whatever as time goes on. I think it's
a good point.
It's a really different sort of terrain that we're looking at. You still have to hit recruiting. You still have to absolutely make waves in recruiting, but I don't think recruiting is the end game anymore. I think recruiting is just sort of the mid game. High school recruiting is the mid game. So yeah, it's something to.
Yeah, like every coach in America is going to say that tampering is an issue, and they don't tamper, but everybody else does, which
which is a lie.
Yes, but like I think the best way to tamper legally is to give your recruiting pitch until the very end.
Mhm.
And even when you lose that recruiting battle, if you do, your recruiting pitch is okay. So you want to go to Stanford? You want to go to UCLA? You want to go to Clemson? Whatever school it's going to be that you don't pick SC. Okay. I hope it works out for you. And if it doesn't, remember all the things that I told you and here's my number.
Yeah.
And make sure that they remember that side of it and make sure that you walk the walk on those things too, because that's going to pay dividends down the line. And like you said, one of the things that you can say good about Clay Helton is, he got McCoy back. I don't know that paid too many dividends down the line at the end of the day, but it
from a football perspective alone, it did.
The point is
you can't account for the other stuff,
right? But that's the kind of the thing that you want, I think, to instill going forward is not burning bridges, because transfers are so important.
Yeah.
And transfers have always been important, in the last 10 years, but even more so now with the one-time transfer rule, especially how many guys are transferring after their freshman season. You go to a place, it doesn't work out. Yeah. If anything, I think this is a reason not to be such a negative recruiter too.
Yes. 100%. I agree with you.
Like, I don't think it's the end of the world. Like maybe this sounds a little weird and presumptive, but I don't think it's the end of the world to, not that you want to gaslight kids, because that's gross, but like, okay, you're dead set on going to this school that I don't think is a good fit for you. Like, instead of just being this absolute, like, person who doesn't take the loss well, you let them go and let them prove you right by going to a place that they don't have a good fit for you, and then come back.
Yeah.
If that's truly what you believe, you know what I mean?
Well, honesty in recruiting is really
Yes.
I think you hear this from recruits all the time, is that they respond well to people who just are honest with them and build the relationship honestly, and it doesn't feel like they're being manipulated or whatever. And
Right.
yeah. And some guys will be susceptible to negative recruiting, but I've always been of the opinion that, like, if you have to negative recruit, then you don't, like, you're not selling yourself well enough then. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I mean, like you said, guys transferring after freshman year, Barry Alexander and Anthony Lucas are prime examples of that USC is now benefiting from. And
yeah, and now it's on SC to sort of walk the walk there.
Them. Yes.
You got those guys. Now what can you do with their talent? What can you do with them on board? You got to make do. You got to make do with those guys on the defensive line. Let's get to some other news. Talk about the Mike Bohn stuff. Where we left off last couple of weeks. We didn't have an episode last week because it was Memorial Day. About a week and a half ago, it came out that SC had named an interim AD. That's Denise Kwok. She is USC's executive senior associate athletic director for student athlete development. She joined the athletic department in 2004, a USC grad. And according to the LA Times, she'll be joined. She and Carol Foltz will be joined in hiring a new athletic director with, quote, a newly appointed interim leadership team that includes 3 external administrators with athletics experience, as well as 4 members of University President Carol Foltz Senior Administration. Outside members of USC's leadership team include Sandy Barber, a former athletic director at Berkeley, and most recently Penn State, Mitch Moser, a longtime administrator at Duke, and Kevin Weiberg, a former Big 12 commissioner and Big 10 network executive. USC's incoming provost, Andrew Guzman, senior vice president and general counsel, Byung-Soo Kim, senior vice president of human resources, equity, and compliance, Felicia Washington, and presidential advisor, Mark Merritt, none of whom currently work in athletics, comprise of the rest of Folt's appointed transition team. Any thoughts?
As soon as I saw this news, I loved it. I think it's a sign that my instincts on this whole situation, I feel confident in my instincts on this whole situation, which is this. Carol Folt has taken a beating for the Mike Bohn thing, and she certainly deserves criticism for the way the hire was lacking in terms of vetting and all of that. Like, I don't think she should get out unscathed. But I think in the end, I have confidence that this is a blip and not a more of the sort of systemic leadership problems that we're used to at USC. I have a lot of confidence in Carol Folt. And one of the reasons I have confidence is that when these things got brought forward, she initiated an investigation, and that investigation led to an ouster of a person who was not fit for their role.
Right. There wasn't a cover up.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then this move sort of backs up my feelings on this, that this feels extremely savvy and reasonable. I think I said at the time on Twitter, like, this is extremely reasonable from USC. You have somebody from you promote from within for the interim AD, which you have to do because someone has to already have their hands in the stuff that's going on in the athletic department.
Right.
But then you foster all of the concerns that I had about the timing of all of this being a little bit frustrating with the Big Ten move and all of that kind of stuff. You reinforce all of those areas of concern that I had by having this interim leadership group. You bring in a former Big Ten AD. I think, and Sandy Barber was the one who took over at Penn State after the
in 2014, after the whole issues over there.
Yes,
after the Sandusky stuff.
So
she's. I don't want to say that she is, should like her claim to fame is cleaning up an athletic department, but she's been included in sort of that mess, albeit a few years later.
Well, she's has experience in the conference to which USC is moving
Yes.
and experience in an athletic department in turmoil.
And the Big Ten.
And yeah, in the Big Ten, exactly.
Yeah.
You bring in, guys from Duke. Kevin Weinberg feels like a really good, another Big Ten connection with sort of upper level because he was a commissioner, a conference commissioner. It feels like you're hitting every level of the puzzle piece of the puzzle that you're dealing with. It just feels like this very well-rounded and respected group from what I can tell.
Yeah.
Which we don't always have the full picture because we're literally not in the rooms with these people, but it feels very well-rounded for a transition team, and I like it. I feel confident in the direction that that this is all going in.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's we talked about it before that the hiring of Mike Bone before it all aged like milk. It was something that I think that SC could be proud of on the surface at the time, not right now, obviously. Because SC went out and hired somebody out of the norm. They didn't make the lazy former football player hire and all that stuff. Clearly, it backfired. And all of the credit that I think that Carol Foltz got at the time, so much of it has gone away because I think our vantage point of the things that happen at the university, so much of it is tied to, what has gone down under Mike Bone, right? Like his hiring, him bringing on Lincoln Riley, all the stuff that Brandon Sosna was able to do underneath him, the going to the Big Ten, all of those things, all of those victories that the athletic department had. It's easy to say, well, a lot of that had to do with Carol Folt, and therefore Carol Folt is successful. But now that it's stripped away because we see that the actual story with Mike Bone, and that Mike Bone should have never been hired because he had, the allegations back at Cincinnati, and Cincinnati people were okay with him sort of leaving and all that stuff. I think that we still have to remember that Carol Folt does more than just the athletic department.
Yeah.
And while our touchstone is just the athletic department, it's easy to say, well, she screwed up the Mike Bone thing and therefore she's bad at everything. I don't think it's that simplistic. And I do think that, she's been around long enough to, with everything else, the massive mess left by Max Nikias, that she can't be not doing things right. That's my general perspective of like know nothing perspective that I'm going with. And if she's able to put everything together with a team that sort of makes sense here, you're right. Like go out and get people who know what they're doing and get their opinion. Let them be contributors to make the correct decision. And that's what you should be doing. Those are the things that you should be going after. And if you end up hiring someone with USC experience, okay, if they walk the walk and talk the talk and know all the and have the valuable experience elsewhere and all those things, don't do this and just hire, Matt Leinart.
Yeah.
Because you hired Pat Hayden and Lynn Swan. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But also you gotta prove it. You gotta prove that the Mike Bone thing was a mistake that you can, get back and prove that it's not gonna happen again. And I think Folt and everybody else has a good opportunity to do that, but you've got to actually do it. And so I think the optics here are good. But still, like you look at the national optics, I was listening to like the Athlon Cover 2 pod. And when we look at things and say, yeah, there's a difference at USC, not only from the athletic department now in this type of dysfunction is way different than it was 3-4 years ago with all the FBI scandals. And the university as a whole is way different than it was 3-4 years ago with all of those FBI scandals and all that stuff. From the outside perspective, people don't see those changes.
Yeah.
Because the only tangible evidence you have to see is Bone replaced Swan, who was terrible, who replaced Hayden, who was terrible, who who replaced Garrett, who left in shame. So you have to get this AD hire right, because it is an absolute huge reflection of the university's success as a whole.
Yeah, I mean
to nail it.
That much is very, very clear.
Yeah.
Whoever Carol Folt hires as the athletic department, she's going down with them. If and I know, like you said, it's the broader university is not just the athletic department, but also you can't screw up. You for me, you get grace. You get my grace for the sense of, I understand how this one happened, and I also still have confidence in the leadership.
Right.
If you do it again,
but you can't keep saying you understand how a mistake happened. You know what I mean? Like
you have to get it right. Which is why I like the transition team, because the transition team gives you time to get it right. You don't have to rush the hire. You let the transition team do the job and find the right person.
Yeah. Chaychex in the chat says, does it give anyone else anxiety to think that Carol Folt might pick someone Lincoln Riley isn't a fan of, doesn't get along with? This is an interesting question, because no, on the surface, no. But I think there's some nuance here. On one hand, you hire an athletic director that is for your athletic department. You should not hire a yes man to Lincoln Riley. Because in part, that's SC's problems as a whole are a lot of yes men that yes men and women that led to all of the varsity blues stuff, the whole the sanctions back in the day, like all of those things were giving too much power to specific people, or not enough power in certain ways, not having checks and balances, not having a system in place that overlooked things. So no, I don't think that you should go out and hire an athletic director that just turns his back to Lincoln Riley and lets Lincoln Riley do everything that he wants to do, just because while you want your star football coach to have the power and the ability to control his program in a way that allows him to succeed and doesn't make him, handcuffed in ways that'll make him unhappy, ways that make him look to the NFL or look to another program. At the same time, you want to hire someone who makes sense for where your program is, and you want to hire someone who fits in a culture that has a football coach that does have a lot of power. I think there's nuance here.
You have to be careful not to hire a control freak.
Yes.
Because you hired Lincoln
You don't want
Riley.
someone who's going to butt heads with Lincoln Riley, but you also don't want someone who's just going to be a pushover.
You hired Lincoln Riley to win you football games.
Yes.
And you want an AD who's going to support Lincoln Riley and his quest to win.
But Lincoln Riley's not the AD.
To win you football. No, he's not the AD, but he shouldn't have to be.
Right.
And again, you need somebody who you don't want a control freak who's going to go in and act like he can control Lincoln Riley, because that's not your job as the AD either.
Right.
You want someone who's willing to work and have a good working relationship with Lincoln Riley. That does need to be something that you take into account. You can't, that's one of the ways that you can screw up this hire, by hiring somebody who doesn't mesh with the vibe of the athletic department, the most important person in which is Lincoln Riley. I agree. You don't want a pushover who's just letting Lincoln Riley run rampant, even if Lincoln Riley's going to be wrong sometimes. You need to have somebody who knows what they're doing as well.
I do want to clarify that, letting Lincoln Riley run rampant sounds like as if he's going to push the boundaries on all these things.
Yeah,
and that's not what I mean. It's more so like you want to be able to have a structure that works for all your coaches.
Yeah,
and everything.
But a good AD will do that. That's literally an AD's job, is to manage the egos and needs of each of the coaches and each of the programs within. Like, a good AD does that job. If you hire a good AD, you don't have to worry about this problem necessarily.
But I'm also a believer in, you hire an AD hoping that this AD is going to be here for the next 20 years.
Yeah.
You hire a coach hoping that they're going to be here for the next 7 to 10. And so your AD, you need to, the AD you hire is going to hire, theoretically, Lincoln Riley's replacement.
Yeah.
So like it can't just be someone handpicked to work just for
No.
Lincoln Riley.
No.
Yeah. So hire someone that works for you, and hopefully hire someone that meshes with Lincoln Riley and with Andy Stinkovich and Andy Enfield and all those guys.
Hire a good
Hire a good
who knows
AD.
what they're doing.
It's that simple.
It's not.
Right?
Yeah, it doesn't need to be this hard.
Yeah. Exactly. All right. Let's get to the last bit of news. The College Football Hall of Fame has updated their new ballots. There's a new ballot out. There are 78 players on it, including 2 Trojans, Dennis Thurman and Mark Carrier. Carrier, of course, USC's first Thorpe Award winner in 1989, is the nation's top defensive back. Dennis Thurman, who's currently the director of quality control and defense for Colorado under Deion Sanders, was a 2-time All-American, just like Carrier was a 2-time All-American in the 70s for Thurman and in the 80s for Mark Carrier. Do you see them as Hall of Famers?
I think,
mind you, they both played before we were alive.
Yeah, I certainly didn't see either of them play extensively, so I can't necessarily.
Well, we were newborns in
speak on that. I will say that they've been on the ballot in the past, and they haven't made the cut, and it's been unfortunate. But part of me thinks it's hard. It's hard to break through when every year you add new guys that are just super clear. To me, if you like in Mark Carrier's case, if you are a winner of a national award and a 2-time All-American, you should be a Hall of Famer. Like, I don't think that's the question for Carrier, and maybe that's ultimately gonna be ensure that he ends up in there. But it's just like it's hard to think of like where's the room. Like, for instance, Carrier and Thurman have been on that ballot before Matt Leinart was on that ballot, before Carson Palmer was on that ballot, before others were on that ballot, and they've gotten in before them. So I don't know what it takes to get those votes specifically. But Mark Carrier at the very least feels like he should be a Hall of Famer. I'm a little bit less certain about Thurman.
The College Football Hall of Fame is weird. We've talked about this before.
Well, it's
you have to be a Hall of Famer, or sorry, an All-American, and while that seems to be obvious, it makes it difficult for guys like Drew Brees. Drew Brees wasn't an All-American because he played at a time with Peyton Manning.
Yeah.
So it's weird because he's one of the all-time greatest passers in college football, and he's can't be in the Hall of Fame. Pete Carroll can't be in the Hall of Fame because he only coached 9 instead of 10 years.
Yeah.
I think when you win a personal award like the Thorpe Trophy, the Thorpe Award, like, to me, that qualifies as being Hall of Fame tier. Does that mean that you belong in the Hall of Fame? Sure, I guess. But like, I don't know that not being in the Hall of Fame means that you're less than. You won the Thorpe, like, you are minted at that point in my book. Like, being an All-American puts you on the All-American wall. Winning the Thorpe puts you in Heritage Hall, and I think Heritage Hall is like the top honor that you could have as a player, right? At SC. Like, I don't think you need the Hall of Fame to validate you even further. And if it does, cool. If not, whatever. That's my thought.
Yeah, I mean, it's all Hall of Fame voting and Hall of Fame credentials and all that kind of stuff. It's a messy business, but
especially because all these players that are on the ballots have like similar credentials. Everyone's like a 1 or 2-time All-American, and like, how do you split these hairs? I don't know how you do it. Really don't. So
well, and that's like, I'm going through and looking at who's on the ballot who has won the Thorpe Award, and there's a bunch of them. The thing that Carrier has above those guys is that he was a 2-time first team All-American, And the other guys I've seen were one-time first-team All-Americans, so maybe that's just like I'd like to see. I would love to see Mark Carrier get in. That's what I'm saying. I'm not necessarily going to stake my living on Mark Carrier getting in this year because it's such a crapshoot, and who knows? Like, there's a lot of dudes that need to get put in that are going to be bigger names that are now eligible that weren't eligible before, and sort of the ins and outs get tricky.
Yeah, absolutely. Scrolling through the ballot, there's some names here.
Like
Michael Vick,
Marshawn Lynch,
Terrell Suggs,
James Laurinaitis,
Peter Warwick.
So I saw a tweet about how the hell has Terrell Suggs not been voted in yet, and this is a prime example. Like, you look at Terrell Suggs for a second there, I thought to myself, because I couldn't quite remember. For a second there, I thought, is Terrell Suggs one of those weird ones where it's like they weren't like heavily decorated for whatever reason, like the Peyton Manning situation?
No, he had like an all-time season.
No, he was like
arguably the greatest season as a defensive end.
Yes, and he was extremely a unanimous All-American, Nagurski Lombardi winner, one of the greatest like defensive seasons of all time, like Morris Trophy winner, everything he was eligible, he won. How is he not in the Hall of Fame yet? But that's the whole point. It's like Terrell Suggs isn't in the Hall of Fame yet. Like,
right.
It's tough.
Yeah. So we'll see what comes of it. Not sure exactly when the voting is, but we'll see how it all comes to be. This is for next year's class, by the way, 2024. All right, before we wrap this thing up and go to the mailbag, we want to do a Mount Rushmore of USC stuff. I want to do one a week here in the off season. Or one of my favorite podcasts, the Doughboys, would call it a Mount Trojan More.
I like it.
But I think we could get a more creative name. So if you come up with a better name, Mount Trojan More, Mount Rotmore, maybe.
Mount Rotmore.
Rotmore could work.
Mount Rotmore.
Let us know. Throw a name in the chats. Send us an email, randomtroy@fanside.com. A comment on YouTube, something, anything. Let us know. We're open to discussions. So first one this week, we're going to do USC band songs. So Alicia, what is on your Mount Trojan More, Rotmore, whatever, USC band songs?
Yeah, so I think this is easy. And I know that you're going to disagree because I'm going very vanilla here. I'm going very straightforward, but we're talking Mount Rotmore, like just the four that have to be on there, the four classics. I think they become very, very clear very quickly. So Tribute to Troy. I put Tribute to Troy on there just because it annoys opposing fans so much, and I get to strike back at them that like you only hear it because USC gets a defensive stop. So don't let USC get defensive stops, and you won't hear it. The same goes for my other song that's on this, which is Fight On, which I think that of all of the classics, I think Fight On is probably the one that would get left off most often, personally, because it's I don't know if it's just
it's not as epic.
Yeah,
as
it's not
Tribute
as epic.
Or Conquest
That's true. It's not as epic. But I love Fight On. I love the message of Fight On. I love the student section hand movements with Fight On. Like, I enjoy it. So, and again, I get to, I enjoy that rivals hate it. Like, I enjoy that bit. Conquest is absolute perfection.
Yes.
It gives me chills. It's epic, as you say. It is distinctly USC, especially because it sort of is one of these things that just like this epic feels Trojan, and also it was in a Hollywood movie, and that feels fitting. And like that's what all of these other fight songs in the country are.
Fan interactions too
are made up for what they are. But USC's fights, USC's like
sound different,
anthem,
right? Fight On sounds like it could be anyone's fight song.
Yes,
but
Conquest is Conquest. It's
Tribute
USC.
and Conquest could only be pulled off at SC.
And like you said, fan interaction, the woot woos in the Coliseum on
the beat at the beginning
on a night at night are just, it gives me chills. I absolutely love it. Just one of my absolute favorite parts of college football.
Mm-hmm.
And then number 4 for me is Tusk. Again, it's a song that USC's band plays because USC's band played it for Fleetwood Mac. They're in the damn music video. They play it with them on stage. It is the Trojan Marching Band's platinum album claim to fame, and also the rivalry touch of UCLA Sucks is just can't go wrong. Absolutely beautiful. That's my those are my 4: Tribute to Troy, Conquest, Fight On, and Tusk.
Yeah, I probably should have put more stipulations here because you're right.
Okay.
I think you went chalk, but I think that's might be just the perfect chalk.
Yeah.
Tribute, Conquest, Fight On, and Tusk. I tried to stray away from there, from using just the chalk picks.
That's fair.
Tusk should have been on my list, by the way, but I wrote this list before we started talking here. I put Tribute, Conquest, In the Stone, and Sing Sing Sing. If this was a Mount Rotmore, Trojan Moor, whatever the hell we're going to call it, of non-fight songs, then it's In the Stone, Sing Sing Sing, Heartbreaker, and then I think you go to either Kids Aren't All Right or All Right Now. And I know All Right Now is Stanford's claimed fight song.
Right.
But it sounds so good when SC plays it.
I think Kids Aren't All Right is a really good pull because that, again, is a uniquely USC band song. Like,
yes. Dexter Holland, we know, went to SC,
yes,
studied molecular biology.
Yes.
Like,
and yeah, there's something just distinctly
fan interaction.
Yes.
So I think if we're saying that fight songs not included for me, In the Stone, Sing Sing Sing, Kids Aren't All Right, and Heartbreaker.
I like it. And I will agree with you. In the Stone and Sing 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 are just outstanding parts of the USC band catalog. Like,
yes.
Just they come on or the band plays them live, and I just feels like things are right. This is right. This is meant to be a USC band song.
West Texas Mike in the chat says SC plays All Right Now better than Stanford.
This is true.
I agree. Although I famously am a Stanford band apologist, the only Louis Stanford Junior University Marching Band. I'm an apologist for them. I love their version of All Right Now. I like SC's better, but I think they're both good. They're both very different arrangements.
Yes.
But SC's is great. It's great.
I am with Tim in LA in the chat too. Personally, and I know a lot of people disagree with me.
March Grandioso?
The Stanford Counter March is just chef's kiss.
See, and I've always hated the Counter March.
I know we've had this conversation before. I love the
Counter
March.
I like March Grandioso, the song.
I love the Counter March. I just love the I love the performance of the Counter March. It's beautiful.
All right.
It's everything. I love it.
It's not Sing 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 for me.
Not in terms of
sing,
song.
Sing, sing, and it kills me.
It's
they
not
don't play Sing 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 for homecoming anymore. Absolute kills me. These Gen Zers, I swear, just taking everything away. In the Stone was so important to make sure that they played it at our wedding, and they did. I was glad. Played In the Stone. You have to. It's just it's an iconic SC song. But yeah, I think we'll agree if we're doing. Including fight songs, I think you nailed it. Tribute, Conquest, Fight On, and Tusk. No fight songs. We're going to go with In the Stone, Sing Sing Sing, Kids Aren't All Right, and what was the other one? Heartbreaker.
Yeah, Heartbreaker.
And Scott in the chat said Heartbreaker as well. So let us know your Mount Rushmore of USC band songs, Mount Trojan Moor, Mount Rotmore, whatever. Let us know your thoughts. Send us an email, put it in the chat, whatever, and we'll leave a comment and we'll give you our reactions as well. All right, we got a question in the chat from Cameron in Frisco, Texas. How would you feel about Jonathan Quick possibly winning the Stanley Cup for the Vegas Golden Knights? And who do you have winning the series, Stanley Cup Finals? I got feelings on this, bud. on the one hand, I'm all for Alec Martinez and Jonathan Quick winning a Stanley Cup, hoisting it, putting their names on the beautiful bastard. Yes, absolutely. I'm for it. Do I want Vegas to win the cup? No. In their 6th season? No. They need to suffer. They need to suffer a lot longer than they have, and they need to not win it yet. I'm sorry. Call me a bitter Kings fan. That's fine. And also, I don't want, like, as cool as it would be to see Quick, first of all, to get his name on the cup, he's got to actually play in the series. It's probably not going to happen. It would be cool to see that happen, but no, I have no interest in validating his thoughts after being traded from the Kings either. Go Panthers. which makes me terrible because that means I'm rooting for Matthew Tkachuk, which is nauseating. So, yeah, none of this works.
I have no opinion on this.
Anyways, we got a question from Ulau who says, "What unit of the defense do you think will make the biggest jump from last season?"
Defensive line. No, linebacker, because the linebacker play was so bad, it's got to be better.
It's the bar is low.
Yeah.
The bar is low. Absolutely. You can go with that one for sure. All right, we're going to wrap up the episode there. We'll be back next week to talk more USC football. As always, give us your thoughts in the comments. Reply to us. Send us an email, random@troyfanside.com, and leave us your reviews over on Apple Podcasts. And again, this episode is brought to you by DraftKings, where you can use the promo code Reign of Troy, all one word. And if you do that, you can receive $200 in bonus bets, followed by just 3 steps: create an account, deposits, and then wager $5 on any sports, which I think works. All the details are in the episode description, so go check that out. We'll be back next week, same time as always, 5 p.m. Pacific on Monday nights. Until then, adios.
See ya.
See ya.